Apologize for the technical difficulties. We are in Os Pei Aleph, Tzidkas Hatzadik, Os Pei Aleph. Kind of a continuation of what we were doing last week. Before I begin, just want to share with you a medrash that he's going to be referring to, and it's foundational to this topic. The topic here is kina, envy. I think to myself that, kina atayva v'hakavod, moitzinas ha'adam min ha'olam. Of those three, kina is the only one that there's no geschmack in at all. Just an observation. So the Medrash says that at the very end of Moshe Rabbeinu's life, Chazal say that Moshe Rabbeinu had to give the leadership to Yehoshua, ki Yodua. Amar le, so Hashem said to Moshe, Kra es Yeshua, call Yehoshua. Aseloi, I'm reading the Chazal here, Yalkut Shimoni and Vayelach. This appears in the Medrash Rabbah. This appears, I just like the Lashon of the Yalkut Shimoni. Aseloi kishem shaya oisei lecha. Now it's your time, Moshe, to treat Yehoshua or to do with Yehoshua the same way as he would act with you. Now you got to flip this around and act with him. Miyad hishkim Moshe. So Moshe Rabbeinu got up. Okay, v'halach lebeisai shel Yehoshua, and he went to the home tent of Yehoshua. Yehoshua saw him coming. Nisyari Yehoshua. Yehoshua got. Why is Moshe Rabbeinu coming to my tent? Nisyari Yehoshua v'amar Moshe Rebbe Yavai Etzli. Can it be that Moshe Rabbeinu is coming to me? Yatzu lahalech, and he ran out of his tent to greet him. Halach Moshe L'smolo shel Yehoshua, very significant, that Moshe Rabbeinu walked on the left side. When you walk with your Rebbe, the halach is, as in Shulchan Aruch, the Rebbe is supposed to walk on the right side. That's the way you walk with the Rebbe. Moshe Rabbeinu would always be on the right side, but in this case, Moshe Rabbeinu understood that it's different. And halach l'smoloi shel Yehoshua, he put Yehoshua on the right side. Awkward. Nichnasu la'oel moed, they entered into the oel moed. Yorad amud ha'anon, and as usual, the amud ha'anon came down, and this is where prophecy took place. V'hifsik beinehem, and the amud ha'anon was mafsik between them. The amud ha'anon did not descend on Moshe and Yehoshua. It descended only on Yehoshua. Mishinistalik amud ha'anon. So this is, talk about, FOMO. Here's Moshe Rabbeinu, who is the Adon HaNeviim, and he's standing next to Yehoshua, and all of a sudden Yehoshua becomes the ikr, so much so that the anon goes on him, on Yehoshua, and not on Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu is makabel. This is what's supposed to happen. Mishinistalik amud ha'anon, when the anon left, here's Moshe and Yehoshua standing there. Amar Moshe la Yehoshua, so Moshe turned to Yehoshua, and he said to him, Ma Amar lecha hadibur. Okay, what did Hashem say? Amar lei, and Yehoshua answered, Kishahaya hadibur nigla alecha, when the Hashem's words came on you, were revealed to you, Yodeya ha'yisi maha yimadaber imach. Did I know what Hashem was saying? If Hashem said Lamor, he told him. But if Hashem doesn't say Lamor, you're not allowed to tell. So here's the halacha in Hilchos Nevuah, if anybody here is considering that career, that if Hashem says tell the people, Koyamar Hashem, tell the people, so Asir Lanavi Lichbaish Nevuasai. So you're not allowed to keep it to yourself because Hashem made you a shaliach to tell the people something. And even if it's uncomfortable, like the Beis HaMikdash is going to be Nechrav or something like that, you have to say it. You're the shaliach, you have to say it. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's another matzav where HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaks to the Navi not for the purpose of telling other people. It could be also, and I saw this in the Malbim once, it could be also there's a matzav where HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't necessarily say anything. There's no mitzvah here, there's no communication. There's Pashat Hishra Alav Hadibur, just Hashra Hashchina. But in any case, Moshe Rabbeinu said, okay, share the goods. So Yeshua said, I can't do that. Did I ever ask you, what did God say? Osasha, and at that moment, Hischil Moshe Tzavach. Moshe began to scream. V'amar, and he said, Meya Misais V'loi Kina Achas. I'd rather die 100 times. In the Medrash Rabbah says 1,000 times. I'm not sure the nafkamina. But I'd rather die 100 times, but save me from this regesh of kina. Klomar, that the painful feeling, the pain of envy, is worse than 100 deaths. That's what it says in the Medrash. And we're all asking, like, okay, we're talking about Moshe Rabbeinu, we're talking about Yeshua. How could it even be that there was such envy? So, the Balei Musar look at this Chazal and they say, well, a mensch is a mensch and human is human, and of course that's true. It's a kind of like a stoic response to this Medrash that Beseder. So you see from here, in other words, what's the message of the Medrash? That Meya Misais is better than Kina Achas, no matter who you are, no matter what's going on. However, not only does Reb Tzadok have a different take on it, but in fact, that's not the ruach of the whole Medrash in context. And this is what I want to share as best I can, Be'ezus Hashem, because, and he says as follows. Sometimes there's a gzeirus maves. Mishum ein malchus nagas bechavirta afilu kamalei nima. It doesn't mean this is every time a person dies, this is why he dies. But there is such a thing as dying because your life becomes an intrusion on the next generation. What do you think of that? It's a Gemara. Yep, it's a Gemara, many Gemaras. But in other words, if I stay around, so that will impede on the leadership of the next upcoming leader. So therefore, there's Xeris Maves. Therefore, you have to die. Shaloi bezmancha, just for the sake of allowing the new Malchus to come up. I believe this is true, that the Gemara says this in two places, the Gemara in Tainus and the Gemara in Shabbos. Tainus Daf Hey, Shabbos Daf Lamed, he brings the one in Shabbos Daf Lamed.
Leadership or
leadership. So the Gemara talks about leadership, but we'll get to the rest of the story. In terms of leadership, so the Gemara in Tainus has a very long, complicated story on Daf Hey about that Hashem said to Shmuel Hanavi. This part of this is in the Tanakh itself. Hashem Perches in Shmuel Aleph. Hashem said to Shmuel Hanavi. Remember, Shmuel Hanavi had just appointed Shaul to be the king. Remember that the people came to Shmuel and said, "We want to have a king," and he appointed Shaul to be the king. That's what happened, and so the Gemara speaks out based on the Psukim that Vayhi ki zaken Shmuel, that the following happened when Shmuel became old. So the Gemara says, let's stop right there. Shmuel never became old. Shmuel died when he was 52 years old. Chinis Dake and Shmuel, that's the Gemara. Shmuel really get old. 52 years old. He's in his prime. Ella Kafsal of Zikna. The Rashi says he became white, he became an old man before his time. And at this point, he became old, and God, so to speak, had a dilemma. He said, Shmuel, it's time for you to die. So he said, let me first see, Shmuel said, let me first see Shaul be the melech. You know, even Moshe Rabbeinu got to see Yoshua be the head of Klal Yisrael. Aaron got to see the next kind. Like, why can't I see Shaul be the melech? So Hashem said, well, the reason why you can't see Shaul be the melech is because Shaul's time is up. And David HaMelech has to take over and be the melech. So, and apparently this couldn't happen if Shmuel was alive. So, there's a Gemara, Ein Malchus Achas Nagas B'Chaverta Afilu Kamal Nima. So the Gemara says that this was Hashem's dilemma, so to speak. This was Hashem's dilemma. He said, if I kill, do I have it here? If yeah.
Shmuel was asking to see the whole Malchus of Shaul have ended.
Yeah, I guess. Heicha Evet. Leimush Shaul. I should really kill Shaul now because it's time for David HaMelech to be the king. But like Hashavik Shmuel, Shmuel was against Shaul being killed. Leimush, yes, that wants to have his nachas or whatever. Leimush Shmuel. So Hashem said, so I should kill Shmuel. Why should he kill Shmuel? He was being ma'akiv somehow. What? He was against. So Leimush Shmuel, on the Zutter, Hashem said he's a young man. So what's going to be if he's a young man? Merananei Abasrei, people are going to say that he died of because of an oynish, because of his sons, and people will say, oh, you know, he died. Chazal say, Rashi brings here that from the Masechta Smachos that if somebody did an avera and they die before they're 50, so it could be that they're chayiv kares. So Hashem was worried about that. He was 52, but probably nobody knew exactly how old he was. Loy leimush Shaul, v'loy leimush Shmuel. I don't kill any of them. Don't kill Shaul. Don't kill Shmuel. Can't be. Kfar higia malchus David. Ve'ein malchus nagas b'chaverta afilu kamloy nima. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You can't be. In other words, you can't have. This is a very important thing for everybody. That when it comes to envy or jealousy or somebody's taking away my malchus, and everybody's got a malchus, whether it's whether you're the king of a country or the king of your family or the king of your Shabbos morning drinking club, whatever you're the king of. But I'm the melech, and somebody comes and takes over. Ein malchus achas legas b'chaverta afilu kamali. There's no such thing as somebody taking your space. Nobody can take somebody's space. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, space is our imagination. In Hashem's world, it's staccato. Shaul's the melech, David's the melech. So there's this transition that has to take place between Shaul and David, and Shmuel is all tied into this. So what has to happen is that Shmuel has to die. But Merananei Achrov, everyone's going to get the wrong impression of why he's dying. So therefore, Nizdakein, he made him old. Nobody knew how old he was, and that's when he died. The Gemara says that if somebody dies at Nun Bei Shana Chas v'Shalom, so that Zu Misas Shmuel Anavi, Shmuel Haramasi. That's what the Gemara says. That Meis Nun Bei Shana. This is the Misa. I guess that's what you're supposed to say at the Hesped. So Zuhi Misas Shmuel Haramasi. Okay, but the Gemara says, we'll get back to this. That the Gemara says that over here that Malchus Ein Malchus Negas Bechaverta, and this is the one place. And the other place is in Shabbos, where not with David HaMelech to make room for David, but David HaMelech, the Gemara says, David HaMelech himself, again, now fast forward, said, I don't want to die on Shabbos. Everybody knows this Gemara, right? I don't want to die on Shabbos. And Hashem said, no, you have to die on Shabbos. Which every Shabbos he didn't die. David HaMelech made a big simcha out of that. Oh, I didn't die this Shabbos, because he knew he was going to die on Shabbos. And that's why we eat Malav Malka. That's the Malav Malka. We're celebrating that David HaMelech gets to live another week. So how that affects our lives and the depth of that, we could think about. But Hashem said, no, you have to die on Shabbos, because Shlomo HaMelech has to take over on Shabbos. And ein malchus achas nagas b'chaverta afilu kamale nima, loy nima. And there can't be a situation like if you're going to live till Sunday, so now there's going to be an overlap of David and Shlomo. So David HaMelech, like Shmuel, ends up dying because of David, and David ends up dying because of his son Shlomo HaMelech. Manyan? And all of this is all that one should not infringe. Hashem doesn't allow for the previous to infringe on the next.
David and Shaul coexisted.
They coexisted, but not as Melech.
Right, even though he was anointed already.
Yeah. Okay. Same. It would be the same thing, right? That over there on Shabbos, ein shnei malachim mishtamshim b'keser achas. So what's the answer? The answer is ein malchus achas negas b'chaverta afilu kamay nima. It needs analysis, the whole Shalom Shmuel, but I just want to get to this. What?
Shlomo was a continuation of David, so it's not next added Malchus, they're the same Malchus.
Don't work that way, because sof kol sof, ein shtei malachim mishtamshim b'keser echad. So if your father's the Melech, and he's alive, so how's it going to work with Shlomo HaMelech doing his thing? It's a very sort of human Gemara, but the Chiddush of the Gemaras here is, this is what we have to understand, is we're talking about big Gedolim. We're talking about Moshe Rabbeinu, and we're talking about David HaMelech. So says Reb Tzadok, Moshe Amr b'Gemara Shabbos Daf Lamed, b'David HaMelech alav v'shalom, u'Moshe Rabbeinu alav v'shalom. We find this by Moshe Rabbeinu, and this is the medrash that I read you. V'ha'etzel lezeh. So how do you not die? How do you stay alive when the next leader has to come in? Ha'etzel lezeh heder hakina. You have to get rid of all envy, all jealousy. If you get rid of all envy and all jealousy, v'sheyaskim, and you agree, sheyafil Hashem yisbarach oiroi b'chayev, okay, I agree to be a nothing. So that, but you really agree, so that's a complete nullification of the ego. And Moshe Rabbeinu, in fact, was the paragon of nullification of ego. He was the An of Mikol Adam for all generations. But he couldn't do this. He couldn't do this, which is fascinating.
He just discovered that he had it. He couldn't do it.
He couldn't do it. Meya misois v'leikinachas. Can't do it.
I thought a rub is it Mekane is Talmid or
Reb Tzadok's question. Got a book. V'etzel hazeh heder akina. Sheyaskim sheyafil Hashem yisbarach oiroi b'chayev v'yizrach or acher, and let another light shine. K'moshe amru b'Moshe Rabbeinu alav v'shalom. And really, this might have been a plan. So this is to me shenistu mimenu mayanos hachachma, that Hashem had already taken away mayanos hachachma, all the well springs of wisdom, took away from Moshe Rabbeinu, gave it, so to speak, to Yehoshua bin Nun, and Amad lifnei Yoshua, Moshe Rabbeinu then stood kacha before Yoshua, But he said, Mea misos v'loi achas. I can't do it. So when I say that the context of the Medrash is not just a Musardika context, it's a historical context. What happened was that Moshe Rabbeinu, as we know, V'eschanon el Hashem, daven and daven and daven, of all kinds of ideas as to how he could possibly go into Eretz Yisrael. And and apparently, we don't know all of his tefillos. There are svarim written about all of his tefillos, but we don't know all of his tefillos. But one that we do know is that he said, "I'll go in as a Talmud of Yoshua. I don't need to be the leader here. I don't need to be the Navi. I just want to go to Eretz Yisrael." So apparently, the way Reb Tzadok is understanding this, and this is really what the Medrash says, okay, let's try that one out. Because as long as can you really manage Yoshua being the leader? Can you manage that psychologically? I would think yes. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, okay, let me try that out, and this way I won't die. Parentheses. Meaning there was a way he could have gone into Eretz Yisrael. And the bird idea didn't work, and all those ideas didn't work, but this could work. If you can get rid of kina legamri, I want to explain why in a second, but I just want to say the math. If you could get rid of envy completely and really go in as a Talmud, that may work. That may work. Moshe Rabbeinu said, okay, let's give it a shot. This is what the Medrash comes in. Moshe Rabbeinu said, I'll try it. He tried it, and he said, I can't do it. So Mea Misais Laikina Achas. So besides for like the expression that Misa is better than envy, death is better than envy, or 100 deaths are better than envy, or 1,000 deaths are better than envy. There's a different context here, and the context is that what this was an experiment. Excuse me. This was an experiment in if there's one last way that Moshe Rabbeinu could go into the land of Israel, and Moshe Rabbeinu said, okay, I'll accept the challenge. Moshe Rabbeinu said, I failed that challenge. Now, does that necessarily mean that it's impossible to overcome envy? Of course not. This was a particular case of being the leader of Klal Yisrael, and being the Navi, and being the Anav Mikol Adam, but still.
Illustration for us, maybe. It's not Moshe Rabbeinu himself. It's like to show us that this is the power of what Kina can do.
So it's what Kina could do, or let's say deeper, with respect, that what overcoming Kina can do. Meaning, if Moshe Rabbeinu, Tioreti, if Moshe Rabbeinu would have been able to overcome the Kina, he would have gone into Eretz Yisrael. But he couldn't overcome it. The say
that this midrash, it was before Hashem said it's your time to die to Moshe.
During this was part of the negotiation.
I'm saying he said before Moshe learned this.
Kirvu Yamecha Lamos. This was the last day of his life, and Moshe Rabbeinu was trying anything. He said, I'll become a Talmud of Yoshua. Okay, let's see how that works.
So this Mamar of his he was moida, I'll never be able to accomplish this.
The whole mita is because of jealousy.
Oh, Mida what?
The whole inyan of mita is because of jealousy. Because Chava gave it to Adam, Shalot Amuti, Uisa'acher.
So who was jealous?
Chava was jealous of Adam, that she shouldn't die, he'll marry someone else. And she gave it to Eve. I mean, we all have mita because of that, because of jealousy.
Okay.
And it was also started with the Nachash, who was jealous of what was going on between Adam and Chava.
So this jealousy is a killer. So Rav Tzadok flips it around as Rav Tzadok always does, and he says, take a look at this. If there is a Xeris Misa on somebody because you need to make room for the next guy, which I don't think is, as I said before, I don't think this is only about being a king or being, but if somehow or another you need to make space for the next guy, it's possible if you can't do it because of kina, then there could be there's a gzeirus misa, so get rid of the kina and the gzeira is away. That's what he's saying. Get rid of the kina and the gzeira is away. I just want to, this has been troubling me all morning. So let Moshe Rabbeinu go into Eretz Yisrael. Yoshua is the leader. Moshe Rabbeinu is full of kina and he's very aggravated, his choice. He's struggling, he's suffering. But he's not the kapiluchmacher. He's not the one who's in charge. Like what do you have to kill him for? I'll go in. I'll have the agmas nefesh of being a jealous person. I'll be in pain. Now the answer with Moshe Rabbeinu is, well, he asked, but in the context, that's not what happened. It's not like he said, "Oh, I'd rather die than have this." He was saying the experiment failed. Yes. That's what he was saying. Experiment failed. But really, why did the experiment fail? I mean, okay, Moshe Rabbeinu, you could go into Eretz Yisrael, but you're going to be in a lot of pain from this envy, a very painful situation to be in envy all the time. You want to do it or you don't want to do it. What do I have to kill him for?
He didn't want. He didn't want to go. He said that he preferred to die.
Right. So let's say, I'm just theoretically, if let's say he would have said, okay, I'm Bekina.
He would decompose then when you bury him. You would decompose. His whole meter would be different. His whole burial would be different.
Okay.
The Torah said about Moshe Rabbeinu that he never decomposed. If he would have done this, he would have decomposed.
Okay. Okay. He would have decomposed like the rest of us.
Is it Moshe's anivus that he's moida that he can't be kovish kina?
I think, let me get to my point. I think what's happening here is that if there would be, in other words, Moshe Rabbeinu with kina cannot coexist with Yoshua as a leader. It's not that, okay, Moshe, we don't want you to be in pain, or it's not that Moshe became suddenly suicidal, like, okay, I can't handle this pain. What's happening here is that if you go into Eretz Yisrael, if you're mevatel your kina, efshar. If you're not mevatel your kina, so now you're a Moshe with kina, and a Yoshua with leadership, with nevuah, and it's not going to work. Why isn't it going to work? It's not going to work because when no matter how great the leader is, if there's kina, there's going to be a negativity towards the next leader. I'm saying a very bold chiddush, which I hope, but it's kum tachais that you can't have a sort of an emeritus with kina because somehow or another that's going to create either negative spiritual energy or negativity b'chlal on the next leader, and it can't be. So if you could be mevatel completely, now I don't think that it's never possible. We've seen it, but in Moshe Rabbeinu, he couldn't do it. So Rabbi asked the question, he said, I have the same question, but in fact, Chazal say that he said he couldn't do it. Meya misais, like hina achas. I'll have to take plan A of misa because I can't handle the kina, but maybe that also, but I can't remain with kina because then you won't have a Yoshua bin Nun being Managazaretz. You have to make that space for Yoshua bin Nun. I tell you a quick story that when I heard about my own Rebbe, but Rabbi Scheinberg was the mashkiach of Yeshivas Chafetz Chaim in New York. A barimter mashkiach. He came from the Mir in Europe, and in those days, and Reb David Leibowitz Zatzal was the Rosh Yeshiva of Chafetz Chaim, and he asked Reb David Leibowitz was somewhere related to the Chafetz Chaim, and he asked Reb Scheinberg to be the mashkiach of the yeshiva. and he became the mashgiach yeshiva. I think 20 years he was the mashgiach of the yeshiva. I think so. I think it was 20 years. Anyways, then Reb David Leibowitz died. And there was a question, at that time it was a sort of an international question in the tiny yeshiva world, that who should take over the yeshiva from Reb David Leibowitz. So there were two choices, two great men, Rav Henoch Leibowitz, which was Reb David's son, and Rav Scheinberg, who was older, and Rav Henoch Leibowitz at that time was, I think he had just gotten married, the yeshiva, so he wasn't Kilu, the Zakein, the Rosh Yeshiva, and Rav Scheinberg, and it became sort of a machlokas, who should be the Rosh Yeshiva. Here's the interesting part. Rav Scheinberg held that Reb Henoch should be the Rosh Yeshiva, because he said that that these kind of things, he wrote a tshuva about it, so you can read this. These kind of things go by Yerusha. That's what he said. It should go by Yerusha, and this was like interesting that this was his shita for life. But I mean, he was a big baki in Choshe Mishpat, and he wrote a sefer on Hilchos Yerusha, and he said these kind of things go by Yerusha. And in terms of having sort of chashuva people around to help, so you'll find chashuva people to help. But in terms of Rosh Yeshiva, Kilo, who I don't know how to put it, who's the owner of the yeshiva, who's the that goes by Yerusha. Reb Henoch Leibowitz felt that how could I be the Rosh Yeshiva when there's other people here, and they pointed to Rav Scheinberg. So this was a thing. Anyways, Basof, Rav Henoch Leibowitz became the Rosh Yeshiva of Chavetz Chaim, and a great Rosh Yeshiva of Chavetz Chaim, and ultimately Rav Scheinberg started his own yeshiva because he felt he was crowding him in. This is because there was, and he actually, when he did start his own yeshiva, it was in Bensonhurst, so a number of people from Chavetz Chaim went with Rav Scheinberg. So that's a history, but that's not the story I want to tell you. It's not an interesting piece of history. But what happened is Rav Henoch Leibowitz became yeshiva, if you know anything about Chavetz Chaim and that type of thing. So once a week, there's a Shiur Klali. And the Rosh Yeshiva says the Shiur Klali. Nobody else is ever allowed to say a Shiur Klali except for the Rosh Yeshiva. That's called the Rosh Yeshiva Shiur, the Shiur Klali. So comes the first week, and Rav Henoch Leibowitz, a young man, Talmud Chacham, so he has to say the Shiur Klali. To be mechabed him, all the other people that were double his age came to the Shiur Klali. And Rav Henoch saying the Shiur Klali, and all the Talmidim were there, and there's actually a picture of this Shiur Klali. There's actually a photograph. It's very interesting, and he's nervous. He's a new Rosh Yeshiva. His father was a giant, Rav David Leibowitz. There's older and great people sitting around him, and the Talmidim, and it's nerve-wracking. So he started to say the Shiur Klali in the Gemara. And in the Shiur, and he got stuck, just nervousness. He got stuck for a minute. So when he got stuck, and he's stuck, happens to everybody. And Rav Scheinberg was sitting across from him, and he said, "Afshir the Rosh Yeshiva means to sagen azoi." Maybe the Rosh Yeshiva means to say it this way. And Reb Henoch said, that's where I was holding, thank you. So Reb Henoch Leibowitz, many, many years later, is the one who told me this story. and he was at a convention. He spoke at an AJOP convention as it was, and he told me this story. So he said to me, I want you to know something, that when Rabbi Scheinberg said, Efshir the Rosh Yeshiva meant azai, that was the second I became the Rosh Yeshiva. I had to hear those words. I had to be, enabled to be the Rosh Yeshiva. Efshir the Rosh Yeshiva meant azai. So, okay, that's not Moshe and Yoshua here, but So Rav Tzadok is coming to tell us that if there is a gzeiras mavis chas v'shalom, as he says, chas v'shalom, mishum, because of the law of ein malchus achas nagas b'chaver ta'afilu k'moy nima, if that's the case, you have a way out by eliminating the kina. If you keep the kina, it's not going to work. That's what I'm saying. But if you can somehow be mevatel the kina, then it can work, and you can be mevatel that gzeiras mavis. But you got to get out of the envy. Frank the Reb Tzadok, your question. Afal pisha amru bakol miskane chutz me talmidai v'chutz me b'nai. Your kasha right here. Even though the Gemara says in Sanhedrin Kuf Hey Amud Beis that there is never jealousy from a father to a son. I want my son to be greater than me. There's never jealousy from a Rebbe to a Talmud. The way we understand the Gemara is that halavai, my Talmidim, should be bigger than me, should be greater than me. That's my dream. So how could it be that Moshe Rabbeinu is jealous of Yoshua bin Nun? How could it be? That was your question, yes? Afal pisha amru bakol miskane chutz me'av b'nai Rebbe v'talmidai, says Rav Tzadok, zeu la'acher misa. Like, wow. I'm not jealous. I'm not jealous of my son. I want him to be the greatest person in the world. He'll be greater than me after I die. By the way, I looked at this Gemara, Sanhedrin Kufay. I looked at as many Mefarshim that were Maspikli, both in the Ein Yaakov, and then I even looked online. Does anybody say this pshat? No, I couldn't find anybody that says this pshat. But la'acher misa, dahainu. What that means is, as long as you're alive, it's not going to happen.
But is kina after mita, then all the other kinos exist after mita? Based on this?
I'm not jealous now. No, but you're mixing me up. I'm not jealous now for what's going to be in the future. It's like a Yerusha. I'm happy to leave my kid $10 million, but I'm not happy to give it to you while I'm alive. Arvosnish. I can tell you from my day-by-day life, I don't know what the farvosnish is, but there's a big one, farvosnish. Nobody wants to do it. You know, it just happened to be this week. I was thinking an Indian of a tzava, and I did a guy a favor, and I don't like doing this, so don't ask me to do this. But I did a guy a favor, and I went with him to a particular lawyer, and I drew up a will. And the way a tzava works, like there's dinat Torah that you have to give your money to the bechor. You know, there's dinat Torah. There's also dinat de malchusa, where property goes, which in the case of houses and karka overrides the halacha, because that's what dinah de malchusa means. Dinah malchusa doesn't mean usually that you're not allowed to speed in traffic or you're not allowed to go through a red light or a stop sign. That's not dinah malchusa. Dinah, just for your information, is something like hefker based in hefker. The dinah malchusa dinah is that the Medina owns the land, like tabu, you know. So the Medina owns the land, and they decide where everything should go. So the only way, there's no, so you have to write a tzava. If you want to do something other than what the Torah says or what the government says, the only way is to write a will. If you don't care, so you don't care, you know. But if you do care, like you can look at the government deal. What I'm trying to say here is that the Beis Din will not paskin different than the law of the land. And certainly in Chutz La'aretz, even here, there's almost no chance that the Beis Din, you can't say, well, according to law, it's like this. We're talking about without a will. But according to Beis Din, they're going to go according to halacha. No, halacha of Beis Din is dinah de malchusa dinah when it comes to karka. Just a yediyah for everyone to know while we're still alive. So that dinah de malchusa dinah. So what's the eighth? So the eighth is you write a tzava, and a tzava literally means that you're going to get this b'chaim. Actually, the transfer is going to take, it's a mechanism that Chazal came up with that you can transfer money or property b'chaim. So it's kilu like something like a matana, but you give it over b'chaim. So right before you die, the tzava serves as a mechanism that it transfers over the property. One second. So I was in this situation writing a tzava. It's fairly typical, to do this, and anybody who's busy with estate planning and things like this should do that. A little bit hypocritical in this regard, but people should do this for the shalom. I mean, first you have to have something to be morish. You have to have something to give over. But if you do, shaloya machlekes, and this, otherwise you're stuck with the law of the land and the law of the Torah. I don't mean to say stuck, but that's the reality. So you do tzava. So I'm sitting in this lawyer's office this week, and who I hope is not listening, and it says this is what happened. So he said, how does the tzava work? So he explains to him that it works like right before you die, everything transfers over. So the guy says, how much before I die? Story. So he says, like a minute before. A minute? He was concerned about this minute. Well, why does it have to be a minute? Like, why can't it be a second? So hey, the lawyer doesn't know the answer to that question. I don't know the answer to that question. But by nafkamina, you're going to die in a minute. It has to be, he was omed on this. It has to say in the tzava that like gitech v'yodech boin kachas, like that as I die, and I couldn't, I'm no altar of Navardik here. I'm just saying that I was like amazed. Like what is this psychological thing? Baruch, you want to weigh in on this? You're a bucky in this, but am I right? There's something which says so. We talk about like Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't do it. We're talking about nevuah. We're talking about coming. Couldn't do it. Okay, just a story I wanted to tell you.
That's the ultimate vitur. Misa is the ultimate vitur.
It's not the choice.
But it's a matzir. Makir that vitur.
The what? That's
I don't want to do the money. I know I'm not going to have.
Lo b'moso yikach hakol. Chazal say lo b'moso yikach hakol, but something. Take something. No, lo yelech acharav kivodo. Even your covered. It doesn't. Wow. Afal bishamru, but yeah, sorry.
Moshe Rabbeinu did everything he could to give the cow to Yeshua. The only thing he couldn't stand that he won't receive this nevuah from, but he blocked or swallowed him, right?
Everything he could do for Yeshua would be included in that, being 100% mevater. And he said, I can't do it. I'm not, maybe he could, but.
Only that Yeshua received the nevuah. Said that
That's the big one. That's the whole thing. Are you going to be able to deal with the fact that Yeshua is getting nevuah and you're being negated from the nevuah? And nistum mimenu mayonos hachachma. And his answer was, let's give it a try. And he said, I can't do it. But if he'd be able to do it, he'd maybe still be alive today. It's just so. So Reb Tzadok says, la'achar misa, I'm not jealous. Before misa, nishtazay pashat. And then he adds this caveat, like mishum da'avat akati le'avar yardana. He adds a piece in here. K'moshe Amar ben Adarim ki kina nimshach milev ragoz. That this is a bigger problem. I do not see this to be true. My personal. It's a bigger problem in Chutz La'aretz than it is in Eretz Yisrael. Meaning in Eretz Yisrael, it would be possible to be kovesh your kina. But Moshe Rabbeinu was not in Eretz Yisrael. He was in Chutz La'aretz, Averly Yarden. So since he was on the wrong side of the Yarden and didn't have the Kedushas Eretz Yisrael on his side, so he was not able to do it. Why would that be? Avol kishemidabek atzmei bekedushas Eretz Yisrael ha'idna shekol echad yesh le'arba'a mosham. V'chein mekoim ragla beveis hamikdash. V'zeu v'yispalei lecha derech artzam ve'ein kan mekoimai. It's ein kan mekoimai, so I'm going to stop here because our time is up and we'll finish this up next week in Mir Hashem. But the Nakuda here is like ein kan mekomo, but it is an interesting point. That what's the difference between a Jew living in Eretz Yisrael and a Jew living in Chutz La'aretz? What could be the difference in terms of jealousy? So, what's the difference? And the answer is, he says, that a Jew living in Eretz Yisrael has Dalet Amos. You have a space, you have a place which is yours. Even if you don't own it, you have it. Might be in Yener Farvar from the Welt, but everybody has a cheluk in Eretz Yisrael. Everybody has space at the Beis HaMikdash, not so in Golus. You don't know. I mean, this is the whole world is talking about this point. Yeah, you don't know, and whenever we think I don't know. Like, I'm not chas v'sholom. I mean, everything should be great in America and London and wherever it might be, but
Wherever Arabs are taking over.
yeah. But I don't. Right. The question is, how bad is it going to be, and how much denial we're in? But by one moment of politics, somebody was visiting me yesterday from America. So I said, so how does this feel? He said, it doesn't mean anything. A mayor doesn't have any power, and a mayor can't really change the taxes, and a mayor can't do this, and a mayor can't do that. It's all just a bunch of steam. So I said, a mayor might not have any power, but this tells you about the majority of the population of New York City. It's not a question of whether the mayor has power or the mayor doesn't have power. It's a question of what the population is there. You have a population that's voting for a jihadist, a communist, whatever. So let's say he can't do anything about it, but you're living in that population. What I'm saying is that sof kol sof, every storybook I take off the shelf in my house has some kind of a story of some guy killing a Jew. We don't have any other stories. That is the story. Lo yaleinu chas v'sholom. So I'm just saying, here's the positive point about it: that Eretz Yisrael, everybody has a Dalet Amos. Now there's a lot of problems here too. But the fact of the matter is, Hashem said that this is ours. That's what we got to keep in mind. Sof kol sof, Hashem said it's ours, and it's ours. And even if there was a golus, okay, we're not deserving it, or maybe not now. But sof kol sof, everybody has it. So kina, says Reb Tzadok, kina is a lot easier to overcome when you have the stability in the Beis HaMikdash to know you have a makom kavua. And there's a makom where you can put your 2 feet, and alpi and figuratively, drasha speaking, everybody, I tell you something, everybody needs their. Here's my thing. Everybody needs their mizrach vant. Everybody needs their mizrach, and it could be in a business, it could be in the kitchen, it could be in, everybody needs their thing that they're in charge of. And you can't encroach upon it. You can't, everybody needs this. It's just like a human need. B'saif malach al makolei. At the end, maybe it's your stick that you need to do malchus. And the Gemara says, who was it, Rav, that, was it Rav that he didn't want to be a Shiva? And no. But was it Rav? Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef safe. Yeah, didn't want to be a Shiva, but once he was up there, they couldn't get him down. So says the Gemara. There's something I guess it's a human need, and I guess what we're learning here is that Moshe Rabbeinu, also was a basar v'dam, and also had this need, and it was kulai ruchani. There was nothing gashmius about it. He was willing to be an insect in Eretz Yisrael. There was nothing gashmius about it. It was just simply a spiritual, his neshama talking. And at this he said, lo yachol liot. But in our smaller lives, says Reb Tzadok, that don't have kina. Make space for another person. I think so. This is the message here. Make space. Mach platz. Let everybody be a little bit of a rebbe, and things go a lot smoother that way. And I know that talks about the questions that Hashem's going to ask us when we come to Shemayim. So I think it's the first one was Himlachta es chavercha. Only a second, I think, is Nasata v'Nasata were you an honest businessman? But Himlachta es chavercha. Were you mamlich? Did you make your friend a king? Well, who makes their friend a king? So it could be a king on anything. You're in charge of the noodles. You're in charge of the Amas HaMayim. It doesn't make any difference. You have to be in charge. Like you can't leave a person with no mizrach. You can't do it. This is what we learned from Moshe Rabbeinu. And Kolzman, we're kovesh, that kina. So then we can live. And we can live and we can live and we can continue to live and grow. But it got to be kovesh the kina. Okay, thank you for this.